It would be a stretch to call it a scam. I don't think it's a scam, but the research is just not strong. And there's one supplement compound in particular that floats around throughout various podcasts, and we're led to believe that this is kind of a miracle compound when it comes to longevity. And first of all, we need to understand that there's no miracle compounds, like we don't know that. But also the science behind this one particular compound is pretty weak to begin with. I'm gonna tell you straight up what it is, but I think you should hear me out on the data because there are places where it makes sense, but I'm gonna give you solutions that you could do instead of spending money on this. I'm talking about resveratrol, okay? And we know some of the people that talk about it. I don't need to mention their names, okay? But at the end of the day, the stuff is not very bioavailable. It's very hard to absorb. It's very hard to utilize. And there are a lot of bigger levers that you could pull outside of that. So let's dive in. This is a really cool new product that's out. It's called 0 Acre Farms. So a lot of people would agree that seed oils are becoming an issue, whether you just inherently don't like seed oils or you don't like the chemicals, the deodorizers, all the things that make a seed oil a problem, not the seed oil in its inherent state. Well, 0 Acre Farms uses a really cool fermentation process to create an oil that is 90% monounsaturated fats. That means it's stable. That means it's higher monounsaturated fat than olive oil, higher monounsaturated fat than avocado oil, and the stuff is potent and it's pretty much neutral taste. So you can cook with it. It's got a 485 degree smoke point, so you can cook with it at pretty high heat. You can drizzle with it, you can saute with it, you can mix it into whatever. One of the ways that I've recently used it since I was turned on to it is I literally just cook meat in it. I mean, it sounds funny, but why cook meat with any other kind of oil that isn't stable when you can cook with something that has a very neutral taste and keeps the flavor of the actual meat? So if I'm cooking lean ground beef and I might normally have to add a little oil, I'll add the 0 Acre Farms oil. It's definitely worth it. So that link down below is 0acrefarms.com/Thomas, and that'll get you an exclusive discount on 0 Acre Farms oil. So again, it's 0acrefarms.com/Thomas, and that link is directly below this video in the top line of the description. So with resveratrol, the research originally came out from fruit fly models, which I understand, like fruit flies, it's easy to measure longevity in a short amount of time because they only live for about 60 to 70 days. So what they found is that when they treated these fruit flies with resveratrol, they lived about 41.4% longer. Like on paper, you show that to someone that doesn't know how to read a paper, they're gonna be like, oh my gosh, holy cow, if I take this stuff, it's going to have a huge impact. Essentially what it's doing is it's helping out antioxidant function within your body. So by doing that, it can help promote sort of endogenous antioxidants, almost creates enough of a stressor that you develop some levels of what's called mitochondrial biogenesis, which is where your mitochondria basically, you develop more mitochondrial density. Another thing that creates mitochondrial biogenesis is going out for a walk, exercising, things like that, right? So it's not rocket science and it's not something that only happens with resveratrol, but if you listen to these podcasts where it's talked about like that, you would believe that you never have mitochondrial biogenesis happening outside of the use of resveratrol. So with this, we look at a really big paper that was published in JAMA that took a look at 783 subjects that were 65 or older. What's interesting about this is they didn't just look at, double blinding them and giving them resveratrol. They looked at their actual urinary resveratrol levels just going through life, whether they were taking resveratrol or not. So they looked at how much resveratrol was in their urine, indicative of how much resveratrol they were getting in. They tried to find the correlation between cancer, between cardiovascular disease risk, between inflammation, all-cause mortality, really. Zero, nothing. So low levels of resveratrol did not indicate high levels of cancer, CVD, or inflammation, or all-cause mortality at that. High levels of resveratrol did not seem to have any positive effect against cancer, CVD, anything like that. Okay, so at the end of the day, when you look at the larger data, you're like, is this actually doing something? Do I need a ridiculous amount? Possibly. But we look at more data that was published in the molecular basis of disease, and this was kind of interesting because it did find that in animal models, not in humans, that resveratrol did seem to improve lifespan a bit, but it seemed to do it more so in metabolically damaged individuals, which makes sense. So there is a caveat. If you are someone that is metabolically unhealthy, having resveratrol might actually help you. But the problem is that what's the bigger lever you can pull? Is popping a supplement that might squeak a little bit more metabolic health out of you and help you out in that way easier than going for a walk? Yeah, it probably is. But the impact is only like marginal compared to what you would get just going for a walk. So I'm not saying that resveratrol is bad. I've got some different solutions and probably stronger things that you could implement. Okay, there is good data with resveratrol too. There was a study published in Molecular Nutrition and Food Research that looked at 75 patients, and they found that when they gave them either resveratrol, another compound, or a placebo, the resveratrol group ended up having a 4.5% reduction in total LDL and a 20% reduction in what's called oxidized LDL. Oxidized LDL is the LDL that's been acted upon by an inflammatory response, essentially, becoming oxidized. So you're reducing reactive oxygen species, you're reducing oxidative stress. This is never a bad thing. Like, it's nice to reduce that. So that's promising data. So as an antioxidant, it makes sense, but that's almost like saying taking vitamin C or taking vitamin E is going to make you live longer. Good for you? Yes. Positive benefits? Yes. Live longer? That's pretty bogus. Like, that's a big term to be throwing around. Like, this is going to make you live longer, or this is a longevity antioxidant. There are more potent antioxidants out there. Okay, arguably the polyphenols that you get from blueberries, the polyphenols that you get from acai, the antioxidants that you get from things like haskap berry, which is a Nova Scotian berry that's super rich in anthocyanins, these polyphenols might be more potent than that. Also, things like luteolin, which is a compound that's being looked at a lot right now. I encourage you to look into luteolin. I've done some videos on that. Spermidine, which is a polypeptide, which has tremendous antioxidant, anti-inflammatory effects on the brain. These are really strong, promising data, still in rodent model, but stronger rodent model. And the reason that I mention that is that resveratrol, most people think, okay, I'm gonna have a glass of wine, it's got resveratrol. A, the amount of resveratrol in red wine is ridiculously low. B, the bioavailability of said resveratrol is even lower. And C, you're drinking alcohol to get it. So that's a moot point. Now, there was a 2015 study that took a look at it was a review paper, looked at 6 studies, and they found that actually when people consumed resveratrol, they ended up having an increase in nitric oxide levels, so ended up leading to better blood pressure, less endothelial stress. That's another good thing. Okay, so use it as something to improve your vascular system. Yeah, great. Does that make you live longer? No. So let's back up for just a second and understand what mitochondrial biogenesis is, why this is important. Energy is manufactured in the mitochondria. Okay, so that's where we produce energy. If you have weak mitochondria or dysfunctional mitochondria, they cannot process fuel as well. So things like glucose, things like fat, they cannot go through their proper steps to turn into energy. If you start restoring mitochondrial health, then you have more mitochondria that can create energy. The shortest way to improve that is to A, exercise, B, abstain from food now and then, or reduce caloric intakes that you're in a deficit now and then. That's actually the strongest way to do it. But also focus on just your antioxidant intake in general, but expose yourself to occasional stressors, okay? Things like a sauna, where the stressor is actually backed up by data to improve mitochondrial health. I would say cold plunge, but the data just isn't there yet, okay? High intensity interval training that can allow you to, again, have these periodic bouts of stress that are going to be really good for you. Okay, again, polyphenol intake, phenolic compound intake, high fiber intake, because fiber associated with the gut diversity that plays a significant role in our mitochondrial health and seems to be one of the larger observational bodies of research associated with longevity, being able to take care of your microbiome. One of the strongest ways to improve mitochondrial biogenesis is actually through endurance work. So doing longer duration, low intensity zone 2 type work, going for a walk. One of my favorite things to do is going for a ruck, put a heavier pack on or a weight vest on and go walk up a slight incline. That is way more longevity oriented than popping resveratrol. And if you absolutely must take resveratrol, I understand there are use cases for it, you want to opt for trans resveratrol. This allows it to actually absorb the proper way and be utilized properly. Other things that you may want to consider that have a little bit more clout are going to be things like nicotinamide mononucleotide, MMN. okay, and also even NR in some cases, nicotinamide riboside, okay, NR. Those have more research even still in animal models that might be more promising. So again, resveratrol is not bad, I just don't see the point in wasting your money when there's other options. I'll see you tomorrow.